Okay, did I come at the end of the conversation there about, I'm going to take a stab in the dark and presume it's about your adopted children?
Yes.
Okay, so 16 and 11.
Yeah, they're getting old. They've been with
Oh,
us for about 3 years now.
okay. So I was actually going to, because that's one of the themes in the album, isn't it? That having to take
Is
on
it?
the children, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, well, we'll come back to that later on. We'll go in with something softer first.
Yeah.
And you've probably been asked, been doing this for an hour or so. So this is album number 7. Okay. Mm-hmm. I've listened to. I love the album, by the way. I found that it's a very deeply emotional album and intense lyrically, but musically it's almost upbeat. Okay, was that kind of a conscious effort to make sure that it had that contrast?
We wanted it to definitely have a lot of dynamic to it, so that it would almost feel like a journey through the record instead of just a typical album. Just because I've had so many records where I'm listening by song 6, it's kind of getting a little repetitive, and I was like, we really want to find ways to have these subject matters, but the music to feel fresh song to song.
Yeah, cool. I actually, my album review, I think we'll go up later on today. I actually wrote in the album review that a point you made there, that I really got the impression that you couldn't skip songs. It was almost like you had to start from track 1 and listen all the way through to get a real feel for it.
Yeah, thank you. That's great. I'm glad, because this is a record, I think, more than any of our past ones, you kind of need to hear the songs in context.
Yeah. So taking that into account then, because the next part that came for me was, is that something then that is, I hate to use the term concept album, and therefore as an extension of that, something that you would do from start to finish playing it live?
I think if the album is extremely well received, we would definitely do like a front to back one. I think because it's one of those things, if let's say the album isn't quite as popular as the Path of Dark Skies, and it's like, well, do you want to skip all these Path of Dark Skies songs? But if the album's gigantic, then it's like, let's do it. Because I think when it comes to live shows, I always want everyone to know as many songs as possible so they can sing along and throw down with us. And then on occasion, we'll throw in some of the deeper cuts just because we would just want to play those songs. And I would love to play this whole record front to back. So hopefully people like it as much as a lot of the reviewers seem to be liking it so far.
Well, you've already, there's already been 4 tracks released. End, Reaper, Times Like These, and Falling Through the Sky. So have you been playing them live?
We are playing Falling Through the Sky, Times Like This, and End on this tour. And Eyes Roll Back, we're opening, is like a little surprise.
Nice, nice.
We were doing Reaper as the opener, but it was because we're playing such a different tour. We're playing with I Prevail and Pierce the Veil. And it didn't seem to be having the same impact.
Yeah.
Like, because this crowd, it's probably the heaviest thing they've ever heard if you're like a Pierce the Veil fan, and even some of the I Prevail fans. So there's a lot of people just like staring as the song was happening. Like, I was like, this might be too much for somebody who's new to like really heavy music.
Yeah.
So it's like Eyes Roll Back is a lot easier to just like bob your head to and stuff. So I was like, let's do Eyes Roll Back on this, and then obviously play Reaper anytime we're headlining or on like a traditional metalcore tour.
Nice. We'll get into then the specifics actually in the album. So like, obviously the first 2 tracks that come out, like the first 2 tracks, the thing I wrote was like, it was like being punched in the face by Mike Tyson, because the first two tracks are just brutal. Like, and I'm more on the heavier spectrum, so yeah, absolutely just loved how that came out. They just the build up at the beginning of the Hell We Create, and then when it goes into the end. I know you would have been asked the question a million times, so I'm going to ask you anyway. The end has been spoken about the issues with your wife and her health. So how difficult was it, and hopefully then cathartic was it for you to be able to write them lyrics and create that song?
I've always been a pretty closed off person, and my band was really encouraging to just let it all out, be a lot more open about struggles and all that. And it was difficult in that sense because it's probably one of the most vulnerable moments of my life, like sitting at the hospital bedside crying, not knowing if my wife was gonna live through the night, and just like a million thoughts going through my head, like losing her, becoming a single dad, like all this stuff. And the band just kept going, more, we know there's more in it. So they were so, and at first I was like, guys, come on. But I'm so happy they pushed me to just be more open with this record. It definitely was cathartic.
If I can get a bit personal, I've had heart problems as well. I've had arterial fibrillation a few years ago. Mm-hmm. Was that what the issue was, or was it more in depth?
She had 4 like 99% blockages in the major arteries of her brain.
On the brain.
So they were, yeah. So she's about to have her 3rd brain procedure because they've loosened up to about 50% blockages, but a lot of the veins have collapsed.
Okay.
So she's having to get veins repaired and all this stuff right now. So she's still like in the process of having to have all of that taken care of. So even 2 years later, she's still really going through it.
Oh, she's still fighting through it. She's absolutely
trooper.
So I mean, so we know that one's from the end. The other part of the album, we're talking earlier about the concept part. The last part of the album, so the tracks like Fracture, Reaching Out, What You Left Behind, I found that them songs were actually softer, for want of a better expression. But at the same time, Fracture that's really emotional. That sounds like a breakup song, or something like a betrayal song. Is that right? And that's what I got the thing. The last 3 songs were. Yeah.
The Fracture is about the kids. I wrote it from the kids' point of view, talking to their biological parents, and how they really aren't going to be able to move on until they take them out of their life. And they've expressed with me the feelings of they don't want them in their life anymore. And how loving them only has led to hurt, stuff like that. So it's just better to let them go.
Wow. Because I've got here every lie you justified. I don't need you. You mean nothing to me. Really intense. But I mean, it makes perfect sense now. And I found that song. It was raw, but perfectly raw. If that makes sense. Like it wasn't just anger. It was nice and refined. The Eyes Roll Back. Yeah, there you go. That's my next one here. That was a different approach in terms of musically how that is. Like the vocals are a bit scattered and the guitars are a little bit different. That one stands out differently from the rest of the album. What's actually that song's story, creation?
That one's actually the only song on the record we wrote with a different writer than Drew. We wrote with Zach Jones, I believe. I know his name's Zach. I want to make sure his last name is. I'm like 90% sure. Oh yeah, it's not gonna be up yet. I was like, I'll look at the credits on Spotify.
Not till tomorrow.
No, I'm pretty sure it is Zach Jones. Yeah. But we wrote it with him because we were just like, let's write a really fun, heavy song. And they were working on it while I was working on vocals for another song with Drew, and then wrote the instrumental to that song. And I was like, this is really cool. And so then I got to work real quick on putting some vocals on that one. So I think that's probably why it sounds a little different than the rest of the record, just because it was written in a different studio than the rest of the record.
Oh, it still matches. What is it? I think it's track 7 or track 8. It goes with the flow perfectly.
It does.
So the recording process was fairly quick. It was 6 weeks, I believe.
6 weeks. Yeah.
So I mean, what challenges did you guys face during that period, apart from you being forced to keep expelling this lyrical content?
I think that is the biggest challenge is lyrics, because you start getting burnt after like 3 or 4 weeks. You're like, oh, I can't use that word, use that in that song. Oh, I can't use that. We're getting to the point in our career too where we now have released over 70 songs once this record is out.
Yeah.
And it's just like I try really hard to not reuse stuff. It happens sometimes because it is what it is, like words like pain and stuff like that. But just always like trying to like, what can I use that's not this word, but also rhymes with this word, stuff like that. That's probably my biggest challenge.
Walking around with a, I think I don't know if you call them
Oh, I've
thesauruses
used,
in America.
yeah, we've used that a lot.
And look, it's okay to use the same thing. Metallica have released The Unforgiven 3 times, so if they
Yeah.
can do that, you can use the
Then
same word
then we
twice.
can.
Yeah. How have you we mentioned earlier about the 7th album. How have you found that the band's sound and therefore fan base has evolved from album 1 to album 7?
I think the biggest evolution is I think we've always been a decently dynamic band. It's always thrown me off when people are like, "Oh, they're singing now, sellouts." I'm like, "We've sang forever. Like it's literally always been a part of our band. We've had soft songs almost every album." But I think we're evolving because we're just getting better at figuring it. Like, I think we couldn't have wrote a song like "What You Left Behind" 6 years ago.
Yeah.
So I think being able to evolve and just like expand, I couldn't have sang a song like that 6 years ago, or even "Falling Through the Sky." Like I couldn't have done it. So I think we're just evolving as musicians and getting better at what we do, which then allows the music to kind of open up and be more dynamic.
Cool. And you've actually got, in theory, you've got 2 albums coming out tomorrow here in Australia, because you're on the new Gloom in the Corner album as well.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
So, which I listened to for the first time yesterday. I'm guessing that came about when you were over here earlier this year touring with Alpha Wolf?
It was a lot sooner, like during the pandemic.
Okay.
Our bass player, Tuck, he manages Gloom in the Corner.
Oh,
So it was like a super, yeah, so our band is very tied with Gloom in the Corner.
So how did you find working with them? I'm guessing it was all digital, but
It was digital, but we did meet them on the Alpha Wolf tour, and they're all very sweet. I was very, which I'm relieved, because I was like, I haven't met you. What if they're the worst people ever and I have a song on the record? But they're great, just like all Australian bands I've ever met. Super friendly and easy to get along with.
That's good. Good to hear. And I mean, obviously, it was the Alpha Wolf tour was, I went to that February, March.
Yeah.
How did you find that tour went and the reception that you got and how you went over?
I was really surprised, like how many people knew the words, because it had been 8 years since we had been to Australia. And it was also hard making the set list, because I was like, I want to play some older songs, because there's probably some people that have been waiting since like 2015 for us to come back to Australia. But it was incredible. Like we played 2 headline shows and they were packed, and they were in cities we already played with Alpha Wolf. So it was like double dipping in the same city. And just to see those shows have so many people at them, I was like, this is great. We don't need to wait 8 years again. We need to come back every year.
Yes, you do, which actually leads me to my next question, which is, when are you coming back?
We're hoping 2023. We're trying to work it out. The hardest part is making all the money and stuff work, just because, travel to Australia is expensive. I think just the flights are like $8,000. But we're trying to work it out. I think when we can, we like to support the first few times over in another country. But if we have to, and we played headlining shows that went over really well. It's just about getting the right money when you're headlining to not lose a lot of money when you go over there.
When was that, if I remember correctly? So it was with Alpha Wolf. It was they supported you in America, and then you supported them here.
They did for 5 days. They were supposed to be on the whole tour, then the pandemic canceled the whole tour.
Oh, awful.
Yeah.
Awful.
Maybe they'll be coming over here to support us next year.
Oh, excellent.
Yeah.
So like you were saying earlier, the connection between or how tight you can be with bands. Like that's something I really, really enjoy hearing, because you often sometimes you just don't know. You just don't know.
Oh yeah, no, we love Alpha Wolf.
Excellent. So it's going to seem a bit churlish to say this, considering the album is out tomorrow. However, I know that you guys wouldn't have just been sitting around going, "Okay, album's done now. Let's just wait for it."
Yeah.
What is the next? I mean, are you guys working on new music?
We are working on new music right now. We're just writing a bunch of choruses and sending them back and forth to each other, and we're trying a new thing where we write choruses, then write a song around them. But we're hoping to hit the studio, at least for the first sessions, early next year, which doesn't mean anything's going to come out, but just start to actually write. And we want to try a more spread out writing process for the first time in our career, where we write a couple weeks, sit on the music for a month or two, then go back for a couple weeks, and like just see what that approach does versus 6 straight weeks.
Yeah. It might. Well, look, that's how bands used to do it. So,
yeah.
So it might, like I said, it might be very, very different now. So I was only given 20 minutes, and we're near the end of the 20 minutes. So, is there anything else that you want to add? Specifically about the album itself, and that we may have missed in here?
I can't think of anything. I just really, really hope people listen to it all the way through. Not just because, we're a band and we want you to listen to our music, but I think the album is a journey. Every song has lots of meaning in it, and I think it's a very impactful record to listen to front to back. So I hope people take the time, and if they do, I greatly appreciate them, because we don't live in a world where albums are common anymore.
Yeah, so it's all just go straight to track X,
Yeah.
and then go from there. Well, like I said, my review should be going up later on today, Australian time, and that's actually one of the things I've written. I think it's in like paragraph 4 where I've gone, it needs to be listened to from start to finish. I mean, the songs stand out that you can listen to them individually, but you're right. I think to get the full scope, especially by the end of the album, you really need to have gone on